we go.
Looks like we have about 1 more minute.
Okay.
And that's probably not necessarily true because I always wait another extra minute for any stragglers. So somebody already has a question. I don't know entirely if they're making fun of me or it's a real question, but they want to know where you can get one of those letters. It is a little bit of a Mr. Roger-ish.
It is. I like
sweater,
it.
maybe. No, they're serious. All right. They want to... So found it on Amazon and I took it to a local embroiderer and had them do it for me. Just this week. Brand new. Impressive. Funny. All right. We have almost 200 people now. This is great. I love it. And I'm sure more will trickle in, and that's fine. But we'll get started just in the interest of time. Good evening, everybody. I am Jamie Farr. I'm the superintendent of the Canandaigua City School District. If I've not met you before. We have a couple guests here with us this evening. I won't introduce you. I'll let you introduce yourself. So Jeanie, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeanie Grimm. I'm president of the Board of Education. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. And Caroline?
Hi, I'm Caroline Chapman. I'm the Director of Communications and Advisement at the school district. I'm the person you get your health screening reminders from in the morning, and I will be moderating the questions later this evening.
Thank you both so much for joining me tonight. So what I'll do is what I typically do. I do kind of a presentation at the beginning. Jeanie will chime in when she has pieces to add to it. And then she and I will both answer questions at the end. And if you've attended these forums before, you sometimes know that when I'm doing these by myself, it's quiet for a while at the end while I read the questions to try to filter through the ones I've already answered and ones I haven't. And it slows it down. And so having Caroline here tonight to be able to go through those questions as we're answering questions, hopefully will help us be a little more efficient and in the interest of your time and everybody's time. If you do have questions, other than the one about my sweater, if you could hold that until the end, because the presentation might answer some of those questions for you. And then we'll spend as much time as we can answering questions. The presentation itself hopefully will only be around 20 minutes, maybe 30, and then the balance of the hour will be spent answering questions. If we don't get to all the questions, what we've decided that we'll do is we'll copy and paste all of the questions in the chat at the end, and we'll create an FAQ document that we can put out to the community as a whole with all of those questions. We felt like that would be an efficient way to do it, and respecting everybody's time, like I said. So let's just jump right in here. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. I'm seeing some shaking of heads, yes. So let's just jump in. So welcome to the forum. We have a couple purposeful pictures here for you to take a look at. One would be one of our musicians. And to say this year has been interesting is an understatement. It's been downright challenging, but certainly interesting as well. And so you see one of our musicians wearing a mask with a hole cut in it to play an instrument, and you see the end of the instrument with a covering on it. Really going to all extremes that we can to make things safe for all of our students and staff. The middle picture was a recent picture where our new principal, Mrs. Logue, questioned the class, who is ready to go back to normal? And as you can see, it was a unanimous decision. They're all ready to go back to normal. But you also can see in that picture our problem. You know, that classroom is full based on current requirements. And that really is only representing 40% of our student body on any given day. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. And then, you know, we're making athletics work. I'm going to knock on wood and say so far, you know, we've been successful in being able to deliver in all athletics in a safe way. And some might argue if we're able to do that, maybe we're able to do other things that we aren't doing at this point. And I wouldn't disagree with those arguments. And so I'll talk more about that in the presentation. And so just jumping in, I want to remind everybody there is a difference between these two terms, isolation and quarantine. If a person is said to be in isolation, that means they have COVID or they're presumed positive to have COVID based on their symptoms and they decided not to take a test. So they're in isolation, they have COVID. If a person is said to be in quarantine, that means they may have been exposed and at risk of developing COVID. And so they have to be on quarantine. Really what I'll say is both isolation and quarantine, typically the length of those are now nearly the same. A person in quarantine actually could be in quarantine much longer than a person in isolation if towards the end of quarantine they either develop symptoms or if they're a primary caregiver for somebody in isolation, they may end up being in quarantine for up to 20 days. And so these aren't decisions that the Canandaigua City School or any school makes. This is actually, they're decisions that are made by the Department of Health. We provide them information, we help them gather information, they do the investigation and make the determinations, and we help deliver those messages. So how about our COVID data? We've been tracking it very close from after the holiday break. For those of you that have been listening to a lot of the press conferences around the state, you heard Governor Cuomo talk about this surge after the holidays. And so we've been interested in the data all along, but after the holiday data was what we really focused in on, especially for this presentation. And you'll see January 4th is right when we came back from the holiday break. And this is student data. The gray line is quarantine, means they might have been exposed to COVID and they had to quarantine. The red line is isolation. That means they had COVID. And so for students, we also put in here kind of the peak, what it was at the high point. At the high point, we had 75 students across the district in quarantine and 24 students with COVID at one time. And that was a peak. And you can see these trends, they've steadily declined. Now, I want to point you to the kind of where my cursor is here, 222, 224. I know as I was entering this data here, I was feeling really good about where we were. What a great trend. We barely had any cases in the district, below 10. But what you can see is this spike up. And we assist with the investigation. So I can tell you with certainty, there's a couple of reasons why we see this climb. I think people are kind of letting their guard down a little bit, and we've had situations where people have socially gathered and caused others to have to then quarantine as a result because someone got sick with symptoms, and in the 48-hour look back, it caused others to have to quarantine or it caused others to get sick. This uptick here, there really is no increased quarantines for the most part here in school. We did have a couple cases, and you got our communication, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, indicating that a couple kids did have to quarantine because of a potential exposure here at school. But this uptick is concerning. I'm anticipating that it will drop back off, hopefully fairly quickly, but it's something we're watching, certainly. Looking at our staff data, same thing. Coming out of the holiday break, we can see it climb a bit. At its peak, at one point, we had 19 staff members in quarantine all at once. And we had at its peak, 10 staff members with COVID all at once. And so that was its peak, and it was around mid-January, just where the students' peak was, mid-January. And since then, there's been a steady decline. Sometimes you'll see these spikes like you see here for this quarantine. And what happens is if there happens to be an exposure that other people were around, one exposure might lead to 4 or 5 people being quarantined, and it can cause that to be kind of an EKG chart looking chart, I should say. But if we look at 2/17, February 17th, since then, and knock on wood again, we've had no staff cases of COVID at this point. That could change at any time. That doesn't mean we're out, we're in the clear. And then we can see our staff quarantines have stayed pretty steady at around 3 district-wide. So let's put that in context a little bit. For our staff, we have about 730 staff members in all. So if you think about 730 and we have none with COVID and 3 in quarantine, those are fairly good odds. And then with students, we have about 3,400 students. Right now, as of this day, we have 20 in quarantine and 15 in isolation. That is a jump up. We were literally in single digits over February break. And so of those 3,400 students, there's where we are. Our infection rate amongst our folks is less than 0.5% right now. And you can kind of see where those active cases are. So for staff, there's none. As of today, we actually have 13 active cases, and you can see where they are located, where those active cases are located. So when we see the data going down, people begin to ask, can we reopen now? Is that the next step? And we are certainly interested in exploring that and going down that path. But there's some things you need to understand. And I still receive this question from a lot of people all the time. Even today, I had the question, isn't 6 feet a local decision? And when I say 6 feet, I'm talking about social distancing at 6 feet. Can't the district just decide? Isn't that just a recommended guidance? And it's confusing, but I need to take you down kind of a history lane here. This was a document that was released by the New York State Department of Health on July 13th, this past July, and it was specific to schools reopening. This was the first document schools received that we had to follow when we designed reopening plans. And I've underlined some pieces. The first part that you'll see underlined is where it says face coverings. And I'm going to say where my cursor is, which is strongly recommended to be worn by all individuals at all times, but is required anytime they can't be socially distanced. So recommended and required. The use of language in the document was kind of vague and a little bit all over the place. And you look below where it says social distancing, it says you must maintain protocols and procedures for social distancing. But above it said when distancing can't be maintained, kind of contradictory to one another. And so superintendents across the state, including myself, we reached out regularly to the New York State Department of Health and said, what does this mean? Help us interpret it. We want to make sure we're doing it right and following the rules. What does it mean? And we really didn't get any responses. It was crickets, to be quite honest with you. So NYSED, New York State Education Department, intervened. They reached out to the governor's office and had a conversation with the governor's office about this language. The field really needs to know what this means so they can design their opening plans. And so this was on July 13th, as I said. On July 17th, NYSED, the ones that spoke on our behalf and reached out to DOH, released this. And I've underlined the important part. And they said, after talking to the folks at the governor's office, this is what they're saying. We need to social distance 6 feet or barriers or face masks. It's totally different, It's or. So now reading that, we understand based on that, we can just wear masks and the distance doesn't matter because it's an or. And so I distinctly remember our leadership team coming together and we worked for days on a full reopening plan. The language says or, let's fully reopen. And I also remember we were pretty much there. We had concepts, we had it down, what we wanted to do. And on July 22nd, NYSED released another FAQ document. And you'll see up here in red, and I didn't change the colors, it came to us in bright red. After further discussion with the governor's office, and I'm not going to read this word for word, but you'll see that it said 6 feet or barriers and masks must be maintained at all times. When NYSED released this document with the or language, from what we understand, I wasn't in the room, so I don't know this for certain, but what came back to me is that the governor's office was unhappy that NYSED took it upon themselves to speak on their behalf and put the or language in there and made them retract it and send this language saying, no, you must be 6 feet or barrier and mask. And so that's why you'll see across New York State, there's not a single district violating the 6 feet distance piece. That's a big issue for districts in order to reopen fully. Our further restrictions, even if they came out like, and I'll just, if you didn't see this, Onondaga County near Syracuse just released this afternoon guidance to move from 6 feet to 3 feet. And I've read that guidance document. It just came out around 3 or 3:30, I believe. Here are some of the complexities to that. It really doesn't address busing. So right now with busing, we can only have one child per seat unless they're from the same household. So really all we can put on a bus is about 20 to 22 children. If we had a full reopening, we would not be able to bus, we wouldn't have the capacity to bus people here. There would need to be some provisions made. Some people in the community have said, we'll just put up barriers. It's illegal. We've been told we can't put up barriers on a bus. It's illegal. And so that's a complex piece we don't have an answer to. The other one is meals. Right now, kids have to be distanced at 6 feet for meals because they have the mask off. And you can see in this picture, this is the academy. This is just one hybrid group trying to have lunch in the cafeteria. And we have them in the atrium. We have them in other places too. We simply do not have the space unless that requirement changes to even provide meals. That's a difficulty. Right now at the primary elementary school, the kids for the most part are having their meals in their classroom. But if you double the class sizes because we bring all the kids back, the kids will be 3 feet apart, not 6. And then we won't be compliant with these rules. And so, those are some other restrictions and barriers. Interestingly enough, I have had people say to me, the CDC is saying that schools need to fully reopen. This is an interesting article that just came out this week where they took the CDC guidance and then color-coded a map to let you know what your county, based on pure CDC guidance, what you should be doing for academics. This side over here, that's the map's mostly yellow and green, this is representative of elementary schools. So if you're following the CDC guidance as it's written, you can see our county, the green one is Yates County. We're right above that, we're yellow. Our elementary schools, based on CDC guidance, should be hybrid, which is what we are. If you look at the middle and high schools, this is this map over here that has more coloration to it. Again, you can see Yates County is green. Above it is Ontario, which is red. According to CDC guidance, and it's based on infection rates, we should be fully remote right now in our middle school and academy, based on CDC guidance. We're not, we're in hybrid. We're actually a higher level of instructional delivery than what the CDC is recommending. And we're able to do that because the Department of Health the New York State Department of Health, their rules and regulations are allowing us to do so. But I thought that was interesting. I've had some community members saying, CDC guidance is saying we should be reopened. They may be saying that, but their guidance itself isn't allowing for it. So, what are we hearing? I'll be honest, I'm hearing from community members, staff, students, can we fully reopen tomorrow? Let's get going. I feel like it's safe. Let's get back to normal or as close to normal as possible. And if we did go in that direction, which it could happen, we could fully reopen by the end of this year if things change, if the guidance and the regulations change, we could. It will take time. It can't happen overnight. It will take at least 3 to 4 weeks, and that's an optimistic look at things. We need to totally rebuild a schedule. We need to redo transportation. There's just so many pieces to it, and we need to sync all of our systems. So if those of you might remember back in September, the technology issues we had, that's because we had to build a schedule so fast, we didn't allow all of our operating systems time to sync. And that's not something we can control. That's actually controlled by those organizations and those systems. And so there's a lot of pieces to it that are really complex. Nobody has ever tried to rebuild an entire schedule in the middle of the school year and then transfer grades over, attendance over, all these student records over to this new system. Nobody even knows how to do it. And so we're in initial, I guess I would say planning. We're planning for it because we want to be prepared, but there's only so much we can do. The part where I say there's going to be sacrifices, I can say with certainty, if we switch from our current model to a new model, there will indeed be many students who will end up with new teachers. It's because that's just the nature of it. We have to rebuild a schedule. We'll do everything we can to minimize students changing teachers, but there will be students, it won't be avoidable. We will have to change teachers at least to some degree in order to make that happen. And so there's that piece. And then I'm hearing people say, just maintain what we're doing now and wait until September. And they're saying that because people feel like they're in a rhythm and the model's working for their family right now. Some people feel that it's not safe enough yet. And I mentioned they don't want to risk major changes to their child's schedule. So there's those pieces. So as you can see, and I'm hearing this from, like I said, community members, students, parents, staff, all of them. And they're all saying polar opposite recommendations. And it makes it a difficult situation for us to do what will make everybody happy or pleased. Granted, right now, this option 1 to fully reopen tomorrow is just not possible, not until the regulations from our governor change. So here's what else we're hearing. Governor Cuomo broke his silence this week and did have a press conference. It's been a while. I know he has other things that are certainly pressing for him right now, but he did do a press conference and he talked a little bit about schools, and he made it clear reopening schools fully is a priority. He wants to see that happen as soon as possible. And to that point, what he said was he wants teacher vaccine rates. He wants schools to report their teacher vaccine rates. So I have a little bit of an issue with this in that I continue to hear him and President Biden say teacher. And what I need them to understand is there's much more than just teachers working in the school system. We have a lot of staff and a lot of personnel. And so I think if they're collecting data, it needs to be around all school personnel, number one, because we're all here, we're all in buildings, and that needs to be reflective in the data. And so we're happy to collect that. And I will share now that we have about 730 staff. Based on some of our early investigations, we believe, number one, all of our staff who want a vaccine now have an appointment. Most of them have already had both of their injections. And we believe we're over 500 of the 730, which is a lot. We really moved through it quickly and we're aggressive, and kudos to our staff for making that happen. So the governor is calling for a full reopening. However, his guidance doesn't allow for it. He oversees New York State Department of Health. That's his department. And when you read the guidance, it doesn't allow for a full reopening. I think, and I'm just projecting here and guessing a little bit, so please don't hold me to it. I think what he's really trying to do is determine how many staff in schools really do have vaccines. Is it available to all of them? And if so, okay, now we can start reopening. I really do think that's what he's looking at. As for President Biden, he's had some various conferences as well, and he also has called for schools to reopen. And he also has said teacher vaccine is a huge priority from his office. And he's saying that every adult in the United States, now that we have a ramped up system for vaccines, will be have a vaccine made available to them by the end of May. Dr. Fauci was saying the end of July. End of May changes things a bit. It does move up that timeline quite a bit. And so I like the optimism. I like the messaging. I do worry about the use of the word teacher exclusively because that is not reflective of what's happening in a school building. And so I continue to push our local Department of Health because we need to submit our numbers to our local Department of Health. And my angle has been all along, I'm happy to submit it, but make it all staff, not just teachers. And they've been great to work with. And we also know that our local elected officials are also calling for a revisiting of the reopening guidelines. These guidelines were made in July of last year. So much has changed. We know so much more medically. The vaccine is here. At least revisit these guidelines and see if adjustments can be made. We shared this in one of our communications. Here is a way that you can reach out, call, email, advocate, whether you're for a full reopening and loosening of restrictions or you're not. You just make your voice known. And when we put that last recommendation out, or that last communication out with this information, I did have some people reach out and say, we're not ready to fully reopen. We don't feel safe yet. That's their prerogative. That's their belief, and they should advocate for that. And so this information is here. This session is being recorded, and you can access it that way. And we'll share this out through Brave Square. Jeanie, I didn't know if you wanted to chime in there. I'm sorry. It looked like you were going to say something.
That was exactly what I wanted to say. We're not asking anyone to advocate for anything in particular. We just wanted to make sure that people understood that the rules under which we're operating aren't ones we've made, and to point people in the right direction for people whose voice does reach the governor's office in different ways than ours does. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, Jeanie. So increasing capacity, what have we done? What are we working on or looking at? And so what have we done? We've added these Braves bonus days, and it's really accessing Wednesdays where students can come in all buildings. They're able to come in for a chunk of time and work on the work. Right now, that is up and running in all buildings, and we are servicing between 200 and 400 students every Wednesday across the district. We've run analytics on those students that are coming in, and for the most part, they are the students that really need that extra support, that extra time on campus. And so we're really proud of that. Our virtual approach, so the families who said, you know what, I'm not feeling safe, I want to be completely virtual, Canandaigua took a different approach than most places. We have dedicated virtual teachers who are instructing our virtual students only. They're not instructing the virtual students and a classroom full of students with divided attention. They're instructing their virtual students only. And that's a level of service that not very many districts were able to do. But we were creative, and we had staff that are willing, and we came up with a way to do it. We've expanded many of our special programs to 4 days per week. Our 811 students, our 1211 students, and our 15-1 students in grades 3 through 6 are now coming 4 days a week. And that's something we've worked on as the school year has gone on to expand with our 15-1 students in grades 3 through 6. Our CACC alternative school students are coming 4 days a week. We have the space to do it. And so where we have the space, we're making it happen. Our ENL students, if they qualify, are coming 4 days a week. Some of them have tested out of ENL services, so they don't need to, but the ones that qualify are coming 4 days a week. We've done everything we can to increase our tech capacity, and we can constantly do that. We have pretty much a help desk dedicated to walk-up service. We've been responsive to the tech needs. It was a rough start. I feel like we're in a good spot now. We have a lot of the mobile hotspots that we've been able to get out to families that maybe didn't have the internet access. And so things are moving forward with that. And then purposeful advocacy for performing arts and extracurricular activities and athletics. There was kind of a rationale behind that. Number one, I do believe our students deserve it. I believe we can do it safely. And if we can do it safely and we can prove that we can do it safely, it only adds to our advocacy argument that we should be allowed to try to fully reopen or reopen more. If we are able to have a basketball season or a wrestling season, why can't we play a band concert? Why can't we try to more fully reopen if we can do those things? And so far, so good. Our students have been great. Our coaches have been great. Our athletic director, all the supervisors that work have just been fantastic. And they're proving that schools continue to rise to the occasion and provide a safe environment to be in. What are we working on? We're talking a lot about our intervention services. And so students might need a little bit extra instruction from teachers that are trained to kind of build learning gaps. And so how can we expand that? How can we offer intervention on campus for kids that it's not even their day, or through a virtual method, through Zooming, one-on-one or small group Zooming? We're looking to build that up, and we're working on plans for that now. I mentioned Braves bonus day that happens on Wednesdays. Can we start adding other days? Could we add Tuesdays and Thursdays and more access that way? So that's something we're working on. We're working on a spring break academic institute, grades 6 through 12. That will be happening for spring break for students that need to recover credit or catch up on back work. And so those are some things that are in the design phases right now, but it will be happening. In fact, we just posted for teachers to apply to teach that. And so we are moving forward with it. And that's a way we've expanded. We're looking at expanding summer school and really making it more available with perhaps enrichment opportunities available to more students than we've ever made before. And we're partnering with the YMCA like we did last year. Not a lot of people are aware of that, but we have restrictions around what we can do. But when we partner with the YMCA and our teachers work under the auspices of the YMCA, we're able to provide more instruction that way. And so that partnership is continuing. We are looking at Wednesdays. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit on the next slide, I believe, actually. And so I want to talk about Wednesdays and maybe are there things we could do differently on Wednesdays? And then we are preparing for a potential for a full reopening. And so, that's something we need to prepare for. The difficulty I'm having, and I'll just jump right into the Wednesday on rotation. Can we look at Wednesdays differently? there are pros, and there's more than what I've listed. But you know, certainly, if we were to able to start using Wednesdays as a rotational piece, students would gain probably 5 to 7 more instructional days by the time we got it going to the end of the year. And so if it was 7, that means 14 more days, but we have cherry and gray. And so when you split them out, it's around 7, 5 or 7. And then it has us moving towards a more full reopening. At some point, we just need to get back to normal. And so moving in that direction feels good. And it feels like we're making incremental victories, which is great. But there are some real cons that we need to be aware of. And what I can tell you is the remote lesson plans would have to be less personalized and customized. And this is what I mean by that. A lot of districts who are utilizing Wednesdays for a rotational in-person day are relying on, canned computerized instructional programs that teachers they're not necessarily designing. It's the program, the computerized program designs. Whereas with our teachers, I firmly believe the academic work that they're creating, because of the time that they're working on it on Wednesdays, is more rigorous, more relevant, and more personalized to what students actually need. And so something somewhere has to give, because currently our teachers are literally preparing lesson plans for 2 or 3 instructional models simultaneously every day. When typically in a normal year, they're preparing for 1 delivery model in person. Now they're preparing for a virtual, a hybrid, and a remote. And that is a lot to do, and it takes a tremendous amount of time. And I know our teachers are just doing a fantastic job, working incredibly hard, long hours, trying to make that happen. But there's only so many hours in the day, and that does worry me a bit. Here's the other piece. We're also being led to believe that the governor is issuing new school guidance. Dr. Zucker, his medical guidance just said last week that he thinks as early as this week, the week we're in right now, there will be new guidance for schools coming out. Well, it's Thursday, almost Friday, and we don't have it. But part of my worry is that we really ramp up our efforts to try to do something with Wednesdays. At the same time, when we're ready, Governor Cuomo comes out and says, okay, now let's fully reopen. And we've exhausted a lot of time, resources, emotion, energy into something that now we've got to shift gears to a new thing. And that happened to us 2 or 3 times this summer, and it was really taxing. And so that's just something to be aware of. I'll also say that early data analytics of Braves Bonus Day has showed it's very helpful for students. If we start using Wednesdays as an instructional day, Braves Bonus Day will be gone. And those students that were coming and getting that more kind of concentrated work time, they would lose that. And that could be problematic. Here's another piece, the A-B rotational issues. We have A days of school and B days of school. The way it's designed right now, if we were to start utilizing Wednesdays every other Wednesday for kids, the cherry group would get 7 more A days and the gray group would get 7 more B days. And that would throw their curriculum alignment instruction completely out of whack. So the solution to that would be the cherry kids would come for 2 consecutive Wednesdays, the gray kids would come for the next 2 consecutive Wednesdays. That is problematic for pacing of curriculum, and that is problematic for parents and just knowing everything. What week is this? Is this our Wednesday, and how does that work at home? It's just a consideration. I'm not saying that's the reason why we can't do it. It's just those are considerations that could lead to confusion. But we are looking at it. I'm not sure if we're heading down that path yet, but we certainly are planning different concepts of what it might look like. And we're also waiting on the governor to see what he's going to say. We also know 3 through 8 New York State testing is coming in some form. We don't know yet. Stay tuned. States were allowed to kind of reduce or modify those a bit or delay them, but we don't know exactly what's happening there. We just learned this week that for Regents exams, they're getting rid of 6 of them and keeping 4 as the federal government is allowing. And so earth science, living environment, algebra, and English language arts. It's, mostly our 9th, 10th grade and a little bit 11th grade, but mostly 9th and 10th graders will be taking those Regents. Junior prom, senior ball, other events, we're awaiting guidance, but we had a long meeting today with Mrs. Logue, our academy principal, about different things like this. And we started mapping some ideas and concepts out. Commencement, we think it's going to be the weekend of the 26th or 27th. I've been in contact with CMAC and Bristol Mountain. They're both ready to work with us. And so those are options that are on the table as well, or others. And so we hope to have an answer for you on that in about a month. We want to see how things play out a little bit. And then travel information. This is brand new this week. If you have a vaccine and you're between 2 weeks from your second vaccine, in 90 days, you can travel and not have to quarantine. New York State just announced that this week. It was CDC's guidance. Now New York State jumped on. And so, but watch this. This one could change. All right, I kind of sped through the last few slides because I wanted to get to time for question and answer, and I see some Q&A popping up. So without further ado, Caroline, if you have a question for us.
So the first question was, do we have any information or data around how teachers were affected by the vaccine and why the academy had to close that one Friday?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So because we were so aggressive with getting people the vaccine, we had a system in place where we could really sign up a lot at once, and not a lot of places had that. So what happened was we signed up a lot at once right away because we didn't know we'd be able to get these appointments. And for the second vaccine, what we were hearing is that people were getting sick. And we ended up having almost 30 people that were out sick across the district from the second vaccine. We were barely able to stay open. And so it was my decision. I made the strategic decision to close the academy where the students were a little bit older and a little more independent, and take the staff from the academy and disperse them into the middle school, elementary, and primary school to cover the shortages there. So we literally had high school teachers teaching primary school. And I should say also high school support staff. They really rose to the occasion and just went to these other buildings so they could stay open. But yeah, it was huge. I had it. I'll just admit I had it. I had my shot. I woke up the next morning, I came to work, and then I started feeling sick. I went home. I had flu-like symptoms for 24 hours. Next day I woke up, I felt fine. And I pride myself on not getting sick that often. So it pains me to say that.
Do we know, I think you said this, but what was the percentage of staff, including all staff, that is vaccinated, and does that give our school herd immunity?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have the hard and fast numbers. All we are going by is what we've helped coordinate vaccinations for others. And we have done a couple surveys with staff early on. We believe, based on our estimates, is that of the 730 staff, we have over 500 who certainly we believe have the vaccine or at least have an appointment. As for herd immunity, 65% I think is what we're shooting for, but I've heard different numbers. I've heard people say 80% for herd immunity. So I'm not sure if we're there yet, but also keep in mind that's just staff. We also have 3,500 students and the like that's out there as well.
Is there a format where people could have more of an open forum conversation and where the dialogue could include parents replying to parents?
Yeah, we certainly could host a forum that's a little different. It's an actual Zoom meeting where we have dialogue. I guess I would need to know more of what that would look like. So whoever posed that question, I would just ask, give me a call. Let's talk about what exactly you're looking for and see if it's possible. What I do know, and I know from experience, this is an emotional topic, and sometimes people aren't nice. And if I was hosting a Zoom session and people couldn't remain civil and professional and nice, I would end it very quickly.
Yeah, and we have 274 participants on right now, so it would be a challenge to have everyone in the conversation. One person wanted to note that their daughter was exposed and tested positive because another student came to school with symptoms. It disrupted their life for the entire month of February, and they want to stress that it's really important to stay home if you have symptoms. We know what the symptoms are by now, and they want to make sure to emphasize that.
I couldn't agree more.
Bonus Wednesdays, there's quite a few questions about that. What is the structure of it at the primary school? And the question is, asking their kindergartner who's been for 3 weeks now, they don't necessarily work on the schoolwork that's assigned or log into Seesaw or iReady, that they're told that there's an adult there, but it's not a teacher in the room. How is this helping a student who's struggling?
So yes, there's a paraprofessional in the room with the students, and the teacher, the students classroom teacher provides work that they believe will help that child make up some learning gaps. And so the teacher's been able to identify some learning gaps and has prepared work for the student to engage in under the guidance of our paraprofessional, typically a teacher's aide, to do that work, hopefully learn some of the content that maybe they're struggling with.
Next question. Many things were missed in the past year, including this person says kindergartners didn't have an opportunity for in-person graduation. Are there moments where we can make up for those lost memories? And will we be able to provide any in-person experiences when the time allows?
I sure hope so. Jeanie, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, we had this conversation at the board meeting last week that we missed the opportunity to say goodbye to our retirees last year, and just what a huge loss that was for all of us to sort of, and for them to kind of end their career with us with, a proper send off. So, of course we hope to do all of it. But realistically, we may simply be living with some loss, unfortunately.
We're trying to find alternative ways to celebrate. So for example, NHS inductions at the Academy was done in a virtual format, and they did a beautiful job with it. Is it the same? No, it's not, but it is something. And so I think having dialogue with building principal, the classroom teacher about some of these things to generate ideas is a worthy endeavor.
Yeah, and last year we were, shocked at how things unfolded so quickly. So I think things didn't happen last year that could have been points of celebration that may actually be able to happen this year with, with some planning. So we're really hopeful.
Or happen in a cohorted scenario of
Yeah.
some sort. At some point, do we need to account that teachers have been vaccinated and that our children are having detrimental effects for being home 60% of the week?
Well, I'll just say that's one of the things that keeps me up at night. This is a situation that none of us want to be in, and kids are missing out. I spoke to the NHS inductions, and I watched the NHS inductions, and I'll be honest and say that I was pretty tearful. We have some amazing kids that were being inducted, going on to do some fantastic things. They have passions in the arts, they have passions in the athletics, academics, they excel, and they're missing out, and it's not right. That's part of the reason I've been advocating so hard for these reopening regulations to be revisited. I'm not necessarily saying, I have my personal opinions. I'm not necessarily saying that what I personally believe is what needs to happen. I think we need to at least have the guidance revisited and evaluate, is this still relevant? Is this still necessary, or can it be done in a different manner? But you're right. Having said that, I'll also go on to say that I have the utmost confidence in our educational system here in Canandaigua. And I believe that our staff will be ready for the challenge when we can welcome everybody back full time. We will have kids back into the routine of things, into the rhythm, and we will catch them up. We'll make up for the lost time. But yes, to that point, I don't disagree with you.
Students who have IEPs but are in a regular classroom setting are not getting their services they're supposed to get on, except for on the 2 days that they're in person. How can that be fixed, or what can be done?
Yeah, so the state did offer leniency around IEPs, knowing that districts are being held to this requirement. And so there is some leniency. Some services in IEPs would be services that would be made up at a later date. Some IEPs were amended to reflect what services we could and we were able to provide this year. And so that was an actual state decision that districts just we're not allowing them to, because we're not allowing that within the guidance. And so districts weren't certainly penalized for that. We don't like that. We have there are instances where virtual services are happening, but some kids, they don't respond well to virtual services. And so conversations between the school and the parents, we just come to terms, this isn't working. It actually creates more issues. And so an IEP might be amended, or we'll try to do compensation services later on.
Since we have dedicated virtual teachers, could the families who are not comfortable in returning to school just switch to virtual?
Yes, that's part of the dilemma. Yes, I'll give you the quick answer, but once we know what the guidelines will be if they change, we have to design what school will look like so that parents can make an informed decision. That's where we're kind of stuck right now. We'd love to know, okay, who wants to come back and who wants to be virtual, but most of our parents are going to say, how can I make that decision when I don't even know what it will look like? And we get that. And so, yes, once we know what it looks like, we will design what a day would look like, and parents could pick for this year, I want to be virtual or switch to virtual, or stay virtual, or I want to be back.
This is more of a statement. I'd love to see a survey of hybrid families to see who is comfortable with fully reopening. If we don't know and are only responding to a vocal few, how do we know how many people want to come back?
Yeah, that's it. And again, that's the dilemma. We would love to do a survey where we could actually share information that we know about and that's factual. We could put a survey out now, but the problem is maybe another week, we have to put another one out. And people also get survey or communication fatigue and maybe aren't as likely to fill it out or respond to us. And that's the dilemma. We did do a survey back in November timeframe, and the notion was just that you selected, were you a hybrid, were you virtual, were you a student, staff, parent, and I pitched the idea of bringing everybody back and using a divider in masks, and it was very much split on how people felt about it. But we could see what the hybrid families were saying, what the virtual families were saying, so forth and so on. But I guess to answer the question a little more directly, we will put another survey out once we have valid information that we could design one with.
If there's space for students to come out on Wednesdays, why can't alternate cohorts come out on Wednesdays? I think you addressed that. Saying students have remote days is less personal, is not realistic. Students do not have different work. Giving a student another day in person learning would be much more beneficial. And teachers planning on Wednesdays is not most true. I have emails from my child's teachers saying they can't answer questions because they are out doing things that are not at their house and they're out in the community. Should Wednesdays be switched more to virtual instruction, that the kids log into Zoom and meet and actually have instruction from their teacher?
That's a good question. And that's one of the, so as I talked about, we're looking at different Wednesday concepts, and that's one of the ones we're talking about. Does it become a virtual one? And so what we also need to look at is access and equitability. So for some families, for their child to be home, Zooming synchronously on a Wednesday is doable. For a lot of families, it's not. Their kids are at childcare, and it creates an equity issue. And the other part of it is, I don't know that we have the technology to do that across the entire district. I do worry about that, but that's kind of a secondary piece. My bigger concern is the equity piece. We've heard from a lot of families that they're just barely keeping their head above water as is.
The maps you showed from the New York Times indicated that the CDC suggested the middle school and high school be fully remote. Is it safe, or why try to fully reopen and put everyone's health at risk?
That's the question. That's what we're struggling with. We're having medical professionals with different opinions. And I shared this with another parent. I went into education to educate. That was what I wanted to do. I didn't go into it to make medical decisions. And so, but here we are. And all I can do is rely on the professionals. And so CDC is giving some information. New York State Department of Health is giving information. Guess who I didn't mention? The World Health Organization. They're giving their own guidelines too, which happens to be different from CDC and New York State Department of Health. And so, we have to kind of filter through that, consult. We have a school physician we consult with constantly. Pretty sure she'll be glad when this year's over, so we're not constantly inundating her with questions. But all we can do is take all the information that's available to us, ask a lot of questions, and try to make informed decisions. I do believe it's safe to be what we're doing right now, and I do believe we can provide more access in a safe manner, based on the data I watch.
There's a question about how the vaccine is only good for 90 days. And I know that question's come up from our teachers as well. Many teachers would not, 90 days doesn't get you to the end of the school year. What's the 90-day thing?
Yeah, I had that same question yesterday, and I'm glad I asked it because I got my answer. And so what I've come to understand is scientists have to prove how long a vaccine is effective. Since this vaccine is so new, currently they've only been able to prove that it's effective for 90 days. But as time goes on, doctors will then be able to prove, oh, it's effective for 120, 150, 180. And so there's all a likelihood that 90-day will be expanded to 120, 150, 180, so forth and so on, as long as the scientists can prove that it's remaining effective. The other part of it is does it need a booster at some point? And I know there's a lot of research going into a booster concept, maybe at 6 months or a year out. And so really it's because of the scientific evidence. It's saying this is what we've been able to prove thus far.
How will New York State testing work for virtual students?
They won't have to test, which concerns me because at least that's our understanding right now. Virtual students won't have to test.
It has to be taken in person. It has to be taken.
Yeah, you have to take it in person, but we will have to see what happens with that. I don't feel confident, writing it in stone yet. But we have about 18 to 20% of our students that are virtual, and so it concerns me how valid these tests and the data we'll receive from them will be. But
if we reopen this year, would virtual school continue, and would parents be able to switch to virtual school?
Yeah, I think I answered that one. They'd be able to continue.
So Onondaga just decreased the guidance from 6 to 3 feet. Onondaga County. Why can't Ontario County follow their suit?
It's interesting. So I think Onondaga County went a little renegade with their ruling, with their decision. No other county in New York State has done that at this point. I don't think it earned them a lot of bonus points in Albany. Again, this is just my own feeling based on what the tone and tenor I have out there. I will tell you that Ontario County Department of Health has made it clear, at least to me so far, and they actually released a statement last week. I provided a quote for. Check it out. It's on their website, and you can see how I actually feel about this topic. But based on my quote, Ontario County said they're waiting on New York State Department of Health to guide them, as that's what's supposed to be happening. So they're waiting on New York State.
This person would love to see us offer extra programs or summer opportunities for students who maybe didn't have those opportunities in the past, the average child. Is that a possibility this summer?
It absolutely is. We're really looking at ways to ramp up our summer programming and make it accessible to many more kids than we ever have before. So it is a strong possibility.
There are many representatives working to take away Governor Cuomo's executive powers. If they succeed in this task, would that affect any return to school?
It could. Number one, I don't think it's going to. I don't think they're going to be able to remove his executive powers anytime real soon. It might happen. It could, if they could have some kind of a say in the New York State Department of Health guidelines. I'm not putting a lot of hope in that being the way that we reopen. I really firmly believe the governor's team does want us to reopen. They just need to find the data to demonstrate vaccines are out there, numbers are low, it's safe, let's go. That's kind of the sense I'm getting.
The guidance has changed so that 200 people can go to outdoor events. Will that allow for additional spectators at sporting events?
I spent about 2 hours on this today. We don't think so. So let me just think about like our football team, which is starting right now. It's bizarre. Based on the requirements of masks and 6 feet of distancing, we can only have about 170 people at a game. And if we have 50 students playing and a coaching staff, and the students have 2 tickets each, we're already at that 170-ish. And then we have a visitor team with 2 tickets for each of their players. We don't think it's going to make any difference right now in our ability to attend an event. But that's something we're watching closely because that was brand new news this week. could have up to 500 if people took a test 3 days in advance, like they did for the Buffalo Bills game.
Is there enough room at the primary elementary school, or I guess in any of our buildings, with 3 feet of social distancing in classrooms? It doesn't seem like it's still enough room to fully reopen.
So we're always the inquisitive type of people. So we actually took a desk and put them 3 feet from each other, and they were closer than what they normally are under normal circumstances. So we actually would have room because it's the middle of the desk to the middle of the desk. That's how the 6 foot has been told to measure, middle of desk to middle of desk. So if we go middle of desk to middle of desk 3 feet, it barely leaves room to walk sideways through an aisle, and that's way closer than what we normally have it.
This person's asking that they would really like to see that children are vaccinated before returning to school. And that seems like it's still a ways off. Will there be a virtual option this fall?
I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a virtual option this fall. The only reason we're allowed to offer a virtual option this fall is New York State allowed us. We typically have to have what's called seat time. It literally means you're sitting in a seat in school. And this year they counted a virtual option as seat time. That is, so if they extend that, there's a chance we might be able to. And then I'll just speak real quick to the child vaccinations. If you think reopening or not reopening is controversial, child vaccination topic is extremely controversial. And so people feel like, it's, yeah, I'll sign my kid up for it. And people feel like, no way, that's, I'm not doing that. So that's a difficult one for sure.
Is going back to the question about students with IEPs, why are 15-to-1 students at the academy not in school 4 days a week?
All scheduling. We were able to do it grades 3 through 6 because we have enough staffing. Here's another reality piece. If we were to fully reopen, we may need to hire more staff to accommodate all of the kids here all at one time. That's one part, but it's all a scheduling thing. We didn't have enough staff, or we wouldn't have been in compliance with IEP special education requirements. If they were all back, we would have had over the number of students that we were allowed to have in a classroom.
Is there any way to make teachers available in their classroom on Wednesday? This person thinks it would have a much greater value for the students who are barely hanging on.
And that's another thing we're looking at is, so, if we don't utilize Wednesdays, do we do something different where our teachers are in the classroom providing access and something on Wednesdays besides the office hour piece? And I will say all teachers are expected to have office hours on Wednesday. Please, if you need help, all you need to do is send them a message and request an office hour on those days. Many of them are posting when their office hours are too. All kids have to do is respond and say, yes, I'd like to have office hours, and the teacher will coordinate that.
Would it be possible to have half-day kindergarten or what were half days in general considered? Kindergarten students could attend each day then.
We looked at that. Actually, that was one of the very first designs I was favoring early in the year. But the cohort mixing and the disinfecting was a big no-no early in the year. What I can tell you this, I've actually reached out to some districts that have that model. They're not thrilled with it because by the time kids arrive and transition into school and get settled, they do their instruction and then transition to go home. They're losing so much instructional time, and the teaching staff, nobody seems real happy with that concept and that model. I never really thought of that until I reached out, because that is a model actually I was kind of leaning towards originally.
Was all staff eligible for the vaccine or just teachers?
Well, that's an interesting question. All staff here were, at least my understanding, all staff here were eligible. And so we made it available to all of our staff.
Do you have an idea of when a survey might be coming out and if there would be specific questions on it to parents, community, and the students?
Yeah, I was honestly hoping to have it in the first, this week or next week, because I really thought the governor was going to be sharing some updated information. And so as soon as we have updated information where we could put together a survey that makes sense to people, because I can also tell you the survey I sent in November about that whole barrier concept, I had so many people respond to me saying, I can't answer this because there's just not enough detail of what it would look like. And I thought I provided a good amount of information. I can provide even less information on this survey because I'm proposing a concept that I don't even know what the guidance is. At least with the barrier, I knew what the guidance was. So that just makes it difficult. I would love to put a survey out as soon as possible.
So the plans for spring break, do we have any more details on that?
The only thing I can tell you right now is I think President's Day that Friday. I'm just going off the top of my head here. Something's not President's Day. What's Friday? Something over break. We're not having it on Friday. I can tell you that right now because it's a holiday. It's a federal holiday. It's a Good Friday, I believe, right? I think it's Good Friday. So it's not a federal holiday, but I think we decided not to have it on Friday for that reason. But it will be Monday through Thursday. They're still working on the design. And so if you could just bear with us a few more, like another week, we hopefully will have more information for you on that.
There's a few posts praising things. I've heard that this next person has heard that there are a lot of students at the academy struggling academically. Is there any truth to that, and what is happening to help those students get back on track?
Yeah, so actually we run data analytics on this too. And what we found is we've really closed the gap on academic achievement for our students across the entire district. There is a dip in performance this year compared to a normal year, as you might guess. But I'm just going to use, for example, at the end of the second quarter, students at the academy on average had an average of 86 overall. This year it was 84 point something. And so that discrepancy between this year and normal years, we've really closed the gap. It was about a 5 or 6 point discrepancy. Now it's down to 2 or 3 points across the district. But I'll also say, just being transparent, our expectations this year are different academically than what they've been in other years. You simply can't cover the same amount of detail, the same amount of content with the same depth in this format. But academically, our students are performing, if you look at their averages, similarly.
Is there any way that we've designed yet to make up for the gaps that are happening during remote learning, or are we waiting to come back in person?
Yeah, our grade level leaders and our department leaders meet regularly, and this is an ongoing conversation. We certainly will be looking at redesigning curriculum to teach previous content where it's necessary. We actually, we anticipated a little bit more. We designed content and curriculum coming into this year, trying to take out, some of the pieces that we could and keeping those load-bearing walls there. But yes, there will be some redesign of content and curriculum, and looking at how do we offer intervention services differently? How do we ramp up intervention services for a couple of years to help close these gaps? Those are things we're working on.
Can any student attend Braves Bonus Wednesday? And if they want their child to attend, what should they do?
So it varies by building because we have limited capacity. I know at the academy it's open to anybody. At the middle school, it's kind of. What I would tell you is if it's at the primary elementary school, reach out to your teacher, your child's classroom teacher, and ask about it. If it's at the middle school or academy, I would say reach out to the principal and ask about it. Mrs. Logue at the academy and Mr. Arthur at the middle school. Sorry if you get a bunch of emails now, Mrs. Logue.
Sticking with that topic, the question is, what's the justification for taking 20% of instructional time and giving it to a self-directed study hall? Why not have students in school?
So what we've actually found, the students, and again, I'll go back to on those bonus Wednesdays, we have 200 to 400 students coming. And as we're looking at their academic progress, they're catching up. By coming in and having a kind of a structured environment without the distractions. I have kids of my own, and it's easy to grab their phone or go play on a video game or something. Coming in, they're completing work, and we see them leaving happy, confident. They feel like I'm getting my feet back under me, and so we feel like in a lot of ways this Braves Bonus Day is helping some of our students that are struggling academically the most. And so that's kind of the justification. That's a piece of it, and it doesn't bring into play those other cons I talked about earlier. Again, it doesn't mean we're not going to do something differently, perhaps with Wednesdays, but these are all things we need to consider and grapple with.
If we switch to 3 feet, does the bus really get solved, or the cafeteria?
The cafeteria could possibly get solved. The bus, no, because we have 2 to 3 students in every seat. So that would be problematic. And here's the other piece. For those of you who pick up your kids, even now it's a half an hour wait at the primary elementary school, about now double it. And that is going to be challenging.
There's just a lot of comments about Onondaga County, which I think we're aware of. Are there plans underway for next school year, given that many kindergarten students may have deferred if their birthday was late? And so how are we going to maintain small class sizes given that the kindergarten class is anticipated to be large?
We look at this every year. We look at our enrollment numbers and our staffing numbers at every grade level, and we reallocate people, or we hire, or we take attrition every year based on our class sizes. That's just what we do, and we're ready to do this again for kindergarten or whatever grade level.
How are we going to support kids who have anxiety about returning to school?
It's a great question, and that's real. I'll speak a little bit to it, but I think this is something Jeanie might be passionate about as well. You know, we have a fantastic mental health and support staff here. Our school counselors, our psychologists, social workers, our prevention specialists. We just have a fantastic team of people, and so you know we'll be working closely with them to make sure we're providing the support we need for our students. Jeanie, I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on that.
It's on everybody's mind. You know, we've been talking about this for months, and so we're anticipating that we're going to prepare for it, and you know we'll do it based on how much we love our students and how wonderful the adults in our buildings are and how hard they work. But we'll also do it with professional input. There will have to be, you know, sort of I think a wide address of this issue, because everybody's going to be looking at the same reentry challenges. And so, you know, pooling all of our resources and all of our people, we will have a plan for helping people get ready to come back to school.
Is there any talk of extending the school year into summer? Or, I mean, last year we didn't have spring break. Were those things on the table ever?
So that would have to be, the state government we have to end the school year by a certain date. So the state government would, number one, have to allow us to extend it into the summer. And I think that would also be a very polarizing concept amongst everybody. Oh, go ahead.
This is a question that's come up a lot. Any reason to think we won't be back to school in person 5 days come September?
I sure hope not. You know, I actually read I'm friends with the superintendent at Webster, and I saw his communication saying he's 100% confident we'll be fully reopened in September. And I just jokingly said, I love his confidence and I hope he's right. You know, I don't know. I sure hope so. I really do. Everybody is saying that that's a priority. Our president, our governor, everybody's saying that is a priority to be fully reopened. So I have to believe it'll happen.
Do we know how Onondaga County is dealing with those cafeterias or buses yet? And have they opened yet? Are they actually open? Okay.
No, and remember, this isn't a school district. This is the entire county. That the county Department of Health made this decision, and that just released about 3 or 3:30 today, that information. So no, they're a good 3 to 4 weeks at best off from being able to kind of bring everybody back and see what happens. But I asked those questions. I'm friends with at least one superintendent in that county, and I said, how are you doing lunches and cafeteria and busing? And his response was, I don't know. I don't know yet.
Do we want to keep going, right?
Yeah, just for a few more minutes, if you don't mind. I mean, if anybody has to run, go ahead.
I'm good.
I'll just remind people, because I can see some of the questions are repeating things that were covered in the beginning. And so this is being recorded. So if you just jumped on and we're not getting to your questions, it's because we've answered them either through Jamie's presentation or through answering questions already. So please listen to the recording and reach out to us if your questions aren't answered.
We're making our way through them pretty well. What about students' mental health, with not about returning, but right now, what if they need mental health support while they're hybrid or while they're virtual? What can they do?
It's a great question. We have a lot of resources, and you know, Caroline, if we could put that in tomorrow's communication, and we put them in a number of communications. There are numbers you would call here at school, and we will connect you with the resources that you need. So we'll put that in tomorrow's communication again.
This question is, why is what we're doing so different than what other larger school districts in the area are doing?
Yeah, we're not terribly different than what other districts are doing. There are peculiarities, and I'll just explain a couple of them. I believe it is West Irondequoit. Their elementary schools are back 5 days a week. They have been since the beginning. It's because they have, I believe, 4 or so, you know, smaller community elementary schools where they can, they have the space. I think Pittsburgh might be in that same situation where they have multiple elementary schools. Our elementary school is one of the biggest in the state. We have about 15 or 1,600 kids in there. And so we don't have that luxury. Usually having one efficient school is a good thing. We have a lot of benefit to that with curriculum continuity and everything. But right now it's working against us. We don't have the space, but mostly districts across New York State, we have a very similar model to everybody else.
Why do teachers have students complete virtual or Chromebook assignments on days they are in person? They've already been in front of a computer for 3 days, and this person is saying that that's more computer time.
Yeah, I would, there may be aspects of work where kids are on their computer, but so for example, if they're coming into school and they're simply engaging on a device during class for the entire class, that I wouldn't be thrilled with that concept. And so what I would ask you to do is reach out to the teacher and see if they can explain it to you. If the explanation doesn't make sense, I would suggest reach out to the principal at that point. Certainly we want, when kids are here, to be being taught directly by their teacher.
There's a couple survey comments. One person wants us to ask if people want to go virtual or fully remote. Another person thinks maybe a monthly survey of a check-in would be beneficial. And then another person is reminding us that some people are comfortable with the hybrid model and that fully reopening isn't where they want to go, but they don't want to go home virtual either. So this is, again, the challenge that we're facing. We've asked, answered that. Why are we not having teachers give more instruction on Wednesdays? Someone wants to thank our custodians and that the custodians have done an awesome job this year. When will there be a decision made about Wednesdays?
I don't know. It's going to at least be another week or two. The problem is we're trying to simultaneously design two things: Wednesdays, or what would a full reopening look like, contingent on what our governor is going to tell us. And so hopefully we'll have a little bit more answers within the next week or two on
that. Someone has offered their cybersecurity professional job to help us with finding full virtual sessions. Another question about the Syracuse area. Someone wants to note that sometimes teachers are making doctor's appointments on Wednesdays because they don't want to miss in-person instruction days, that their in-person instruction days are very sacred to them and they don't want to miss those for appointments. And so they may be using sick time on Wednesdays for things like that. That was noted by someone in here. Is there any barrier to full-time reopening from the teachers union? Is a question that was asked.
The teachers union, every staff member has been nothing short of outstanding. They have not resisted anything like that. They're certainly not a barrier. They've been a partner in planning and preparation.
There's a question about virtual students and Wednesdays. Why are virtual students having an asynchronous day on Wednesdays?
Because the teachers that are delivering the virtual lessons are also part of department time and faculty meetings, department time, and planning sessions. So, and they need to be aligned with their colleagues who are teaching in the hybrid. And so it's important that they're able to meet with them to continue curriculum planning, to keep the cycles aligned.
There's a concern about virtual students not taking the state test, but then the students who are coming in person and don't only get 2 days of direct instruction having to take the test. That's just a concern. There's some thank you. There's concern about summer school and that our schools are very hot, so it's not a desirable time to go to school, which I've been in school in the summer, it's hot. It's not, that's very true.
It sounds nice right about now though, because it's cold out.
What, is there any offerings, ways to offer classes over the summer for the students in the virtual setting who missed some of those electives like tech classes or art classes that they didn't have the opportunity to take during the school year because they were not offered, and hopefully they could take those over the summer.
It's a great question. So again, this is another New York State requirement. For a class to have credit, you have to have a certain number of seat hours. And typically you can't get an authentic credit class over a summer. There's just not enough time to have the required seat hours. But to do it as just an experience, because it's something you're passionate about, if that's what you're asking, there might be some room for that.
So there's a question about, is there a requirement for Zoom on the Wednesdays, or it sounds like this person has a first grader who doesn't have any Zooming on virtual days, and they have not had a single Zoom all school year.
Yeah, so I would ask you to reach out to the teacher or the building principal. That certainly is not what our expectation is. And it's not what I'm hearing. There is on virtual days, there is a schedule of.
So I think they're actually asking about like the office hours on Wednesdays more. Like, that's not happening.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So if the office hours aren't happening, all parents need to do is request an office hour, and the teacher will set it up on a Wednesday.
How's our budget look?
So this question is really about our barriers, masks, staffing, and everything. We've spent probably a little over $300,000 on PPE and cleaning supplies, and that's on the low end. It's been exhausting, but at the same time of budget. But anyway, if you're going into a deeper budget conversation, we will be having our budget presentation shortly, and so that's a whole other hour presentation. So please stay tuned, and we'll do one of those forums as well.
There's a concern that people forget their badge, they're not let into a sporting event, so we can talk and see if that can change. If there's spring break offerings, does our staff lose their spring break? How does that work?
No, there's a spring break this year. That was last year. There wasn't a spring break.
Some people are giving some shout outs to teachers because they know that they're working very long hours and have sleepless nights and are doing a lot of stuff on different times than they usually are, and responding to things at very different times than they usually are.
So Caroline and Jeanie know this about me, is I walk buildings all the time. And this year you can just see the weight of everything on our staff. Mm-hmm. They are working so hard, and it's so emotionally draining and frustrating. And believe me, they want it back to normal just as much as anybody. This has been a tough year, and a lot of tearful moments with our staff. But like one told me today, is we're just keeping on. That's all we can do is just keep moving forward, keep moving. Kudos to our staff. They're just fantastic.
So just to reiterate, summer school is on the table for all buildings, not just primary elementary school. Yep. Is it an option to Zoom into your class that's happening when you're if you're gray, can you Zoom into cherry and vice versa? And is that option?
Yeah, we don't have we do not have the technology to do that in all classes, but there are some classes that are doing that, but it's fewer than certainly the majority.
When the vaccine is available to students, will it be required? We don't know the answer to that.
No, we don't know the answer to that.
Someone said their kids are thriving in the hybrid model. I know it's not the norm, but it's worth mentioning because they are loving school, having memorable experiences. They're not ideal, but they're still kids and they're learning. I've heard that there's a lot of buses that don't have a lot of children on them. In fact, there's been some seen with less than 5 kids on it. Can we speak to that?
Yeah, sometimes you'll see a bus with really low numbers because maybe kids are absent. But yeah, typically our kids, you'll see anywhere from 8 to 15 on a bus right now. And again, our max that we can put on a bus is around 20 to 22. But we'll see that range.
It depends on where you see the bus. It could be that the bus has dropped most people off at that point. Is there any consideration being taken into account that hybrid class sizes are smaller, and that's beneficial to students. Class sizes at the primary elementary school have been large the past couple years. As graphs are growing at academics, is there opportunities for smaller class sizes moving forward?
Yeah, that's something we look at all the time. I think at the primary level, the class sizes are a little more favorable than the elementary level, but it is something we're always looking at and comparing to budget.
Someone wanted to say that Braves Bonus Day does help 400 children for 2.5 hours, but having more students in person, they're advocating would help more children. If there's a chance of not reopening in September, how are we going to address constraints to returning? This is, how can we prepare differently, or how are we preparing if that's the case?
Yeah, we've had some conversations around, we have these desktop barriers that I would argue they don't do much, but are there other ways we could put barriers up and bring more people back? I would anticipate if we're in a similar situation next year that things would look a little different, that we would do things a little differently, and we would schedule for a little bit different look. But that's something we do talk about. We're still hopeful it'll be a full reopening.
This person wants to make sure that regulations related to Regents exam and AP exams are communicated in advance. And we do know that 4 Regents exams as of right now are a possibility still to happen, but the rest were canceled. Is that accurate? So Earth Science, Living Environment, ELA, and Algebra are the ones that the federal government is requiring us to have, but we still are seeking some more guidance on that. Someone wants to commend us for getting our staff vaccinated so quickly. This person would like more comments on their child's work on remote days and more feedback. How do you get a recorded session of this meeting if you missed it? So that'll be me, and I will have it up on the website likely tomorrow morning. I'm probably not going to get up there tonight. And then additionally, we're going to share the link to the recording in tomorrow's 3 p.m. communication. So that would be probably the easiest way to get it, but it will also be available on the COVID-19 update page on the website. Can you explain the process for the Wednesday snow day? It said that the person's asking that children, was the expectation that children had to do no work, or what was the expectation on that Wednesday snow day?
So what I said from even earlier forums in the fall, that we would have snow days this year. We would do snow days. The exception to that would be is if it fell on a Wednesday, because the district was set up already for instruction on a Wednesday. Everybody was remote. And so it shouldn't make much of a difference. That being said, I did hear feedback from people that was difficult and challenging for a number of reasons. So as long as we have emergency days that we can use, we will use emergency days even if it falls on a Wednesday. Once we run out of emergency days, if we do, I think we have up to 2 or 3 left before we run out of days. Any emergency day after that would then become a remote learning day. That's the plan moving forward.
This one's worded differently, so I'm trying to figure it out. On Wednesdays, what type of meetings take place?
So we do professional development, we do faculty meetings, we do department meetings, we do planning time and office hours.
So we are almost to the end. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Are we going to offer driver's ed this summer?
Hope so. We weren't allowed to last summer. We're waiting on guidance to see how that might look. Right now, it looks like the classroom instruction piece could happen, but they're unsure about the driving piece, and that's the difficulty. If you can't do the driving piece,
it's important.
A big component. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a concern about the teachers responding on Zoom, again, from the office hours concept that came up a couple times. Do you know if we're offering lunches over the summer? I know lunches are still offered to all students free of charge right now. I don't think we have any waivers yet for the summer.
Yeah, that's a federal waiver system, so we'll have to wait on what the federal government does with that one. Someone
loves their first grade teacher. They're amazing and they respond day and night. someone else, just a lot of shout outs to teachers. Is repeating a grade an option if you're not feeling like you're getting what you needed?
So those are conversations that should happen between the parent, the teacher, and the building administration. And so, those are always conversations we want to have. What I would caution you from doing is saying, I want my child to repeat the grade just because this year was difficult. You really look at the student's learning and their learning profile and make the decisions off of that, because the reality is this year was difficult for almost all of our students. So it's a little bit trickier of a conversation, but certainly have that conversation with the teacher and the building administrator.
There's the last comment is that someone wants to second the positive comment about the hybrid model. I enjoy knowing exactly what my child is learning, and she enjoys being with her younger sibling very often. It might be stressful to switch everything up with only a few months left. So that was, oh no, of course we got a couple more. Just a reminder.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And the last comment is just, this has been disruptive, and we get that.
Thanks for facilitating that, Caroline. That was over 100 questions you just scrolled through and helped to facilitate for us. Jeanie, any final thoughts before we call this to a close?
No, I love the repetitions of thanking people throughout this. This has been everybody knows, but we still have to say this has been an incredibly hard year. And any thank you in any form goes such a long way. So, kudos to the people who put in here. Thank you to teachers. Thank you to custodians. Thank you for your time tonight. And thank you to parents for taking on a really different role in life in this last year. We still want to say we're all in it together. It sometimes feels a little fractured because it's been a year. We have been doing this for a year. And so people are tired and sort of sick and tired, and we totally get it. And for every comment we get that we want schools open, for every 2 comments, we get 1 comment that we don't want schools open. And so we're trying to continue to listen to the experts and also follow the rules that we need to follow. So, thank you, Jamie, for continuing to communicate as regularly and fully and transparently as you do. And thank you to everyone for taking time out of your night tonight to be with us and for asking really good questions.
Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Jeanie. Really appreciate everybody. What's that?
And this will be ready online, and if anyone, just send your friends to watch it if they missed it.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.